Why I Am a Biblical Maximalist, a conversation with Dr. David Falk. Yeah, what's going on, party people in the place to be? I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? I'm glad everybody's here. Let me say what's up to the party people in the chat. We got Mr. Green, we got Adrian Jones. Hey, we got IP in the building. What's going on, sir? We got the real American, Mr. Phil Fox. We got the incomparable, the indelible Nate 2D2 in the building. And as always, people, if you haven't, please like, share, and subscribe. Please share that link. Tell a friend to tell a friend again. If you are so inclined, you can support this online ministry via PayPal. Or if you want to be a monthly supporter, you could become a patron where you get an assortment of delicious goodies that will edify your personal Bible study. And yeah. Oh, we got Will M. We got Preston Scott. Who else we got in here? Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay. This is good. And we have in the building everybody's favorite Egyptologist, Mr. Dr. David A. Falk. What's going on, sir?
Hey, it's going great. How are you?
I'm doing well. We were just talking behind the scenes about how Mr. Falk has become quite the internet darling as of late. He's been making the rounds.
I wouldn't say darling.
All sorts of friends he's been making on the internet. You know?
Public enemy number one, maybe. But I don't think darling quite captures it.
Right. But it's good to see you making the rounds, and it's important. I feel like you bring so much to the body of Christ, and we all benefit from your vast knowledge. So thank you for just being on the interwebs and sharing what you've known over the years. So thank you.
I do what I do.
Yes, sir.
For the glory of God.
Amen. And not only do we share a love for the gospel and for the ancient Near East, come to find out, we also share a love for Duran Duran.
Yes.
Did not know that.
Very, very much so.
I was scrolling through my YouTube and I saw, was it Seven and the Ragged Tiger?
Seven and the Ragged Tiger.
The name of your album video. And I'm like, wait a minute. He's talking about Duran Duran? How does that fit in with the Old Kingdom? You know what I mean? Like, how does that work?
I've named all my live streams after like either cultural references, nothing to do with ancient Near East or the Bible. Just a random name, because I was thinking, okay, how am I going to come up with a unique ancient Near Eastern name for every live chat done once a week? I can't.
Right. It's hard.
Just scrap it and just do the cultural reference that may relate to the number or some event or something, the random names.
Now, here's the question though. Here's a deep question. What is your favorite Duran Duran album?
Ooh, that was a tough choice, because it's gonna be either between Rio or the Wedding album.
Oh,
I love the Wedding album.
Good choices. My favorite
album
Duran
is excellent.
My favorite Duran Duran album is technically not a Duran Duran album, because you remember when they split.
The Arcadia album?
The Arcadia album. So Red the Rose?
Oh, yes.
Classic. Yes.
So Red the Rose is very good.
Classic.
Very
Classic
good.
Album.
The Flame is just a brilliant song.
Yes. Duran Duran, Engineer East, it is. Well, if you listen now back to Duran Duran, they did dabble with a lot of esoteric stuff too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not that far of a reach.
No, it isn't.
So, believe it or not. What about View to a Kill? Love that.
View to a Kill was great. The much panned Big Thing was actually pretty good too.
Which one?
The Big Thing.
Big Thing was good.
Big Thing was good as
All
well.
She Wants, right?
Yep.
Right. The Chauffeur.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the Smiths? You into the Smiths as well? Or?
No, I'm not into the Smiths.
How about Depeche Mode?
Depeche Mode, not really.
Okay.
I was really into Tangerine Dream.
Oh wow, you was way left with it. Okay, cool.
Oh yeah, I mean I have very esoteric taste in music.
Yeah, I'm very eclectic. I go from Bjork to Wu-Tang. You know what I mean? It's like I run the gambit. So
TM Network.
Okay.
Basically, I love movie soundtracks.
How about Susie and the Banshees? How about Susie and the Banshees?
Nope, did not get into them. But no, not The Cure. Okay. What else was I into?
Pep Shop Boys?
No. What's it called now?
Eurythmics.
The Watchmen.
Oh, you
got Watchmen. I was really big into. Let's see what else. Northern Pikes.
Okay, now you're leaving me. Now I'm not even.
As I say, I have very eclectic tastes in music.
That's great.
Very eclectic tastes.
But anyway, so
not into CCM.
Okay. Fair enough. I'm sure people didn't come here for our taste in music. Yeah, man, we do. I do. I go from Bjork to Wu-Tang, man. You know, it's. You know, I like Portishead. You know, I'm into trip. They don't really make trip hop like, you know, or I like down tempo music.
Aruna, I like. Yeah. So I mean, Aruna.
Okay.
You know, European house music.
You really?
Yes.
I'm a big house music fan.
Yep, very much.
But real house music, not that stuff. The fist pumping.
Euro house.
Yeah, not that.
Yeah, I'm into that actually.
Really? But anyway, people did not come here for eclectic tales.
Music,
maybe they did.
Music critique. Yeah,
maybe they did. I don't know.
The BK Music Show.
There you go. So what are we here for? Is to talk about biblical maximalism and minimalism.
Yes.
And the difference between the two. So let's start with biblical minimalism. What
Absolutely.
is
great place to start. Yes. Basically, what happened was in the 1970s and 80s, you had a flurry of scholars come out as basically saying that there was nothing historical in the Bible at all. So basically, starting from the Babylonian exile and working back in time, they would say there was nothing historical in the Bible. There was no King David. There was no Solomon. All the kings mentioned in the Judite king lists and the Israelite king lists were fake. There's no Moses, there's no Abraham, and they worked all the way back and basically said there's nothing in the scriptures that you can reliably count on. So essentially, the term minimalism means they minimalize anything that is historical about the Bible.
Right.
So that's biblical minimalism in a nutshell. And it came out with a bunch of young scholars in the 70s and 80s. You know, big names today like Tommy Thompson, Lemke, Philip Davies, even Israel Finkelstein. These were your classic minimalists, and to some extent to William Beaver. So these are your classical biblical minimalists that sort of got this ball rolling. Now, once they posited that, you know, that became the predominant view in scholarship.
Well, let's talk about these guys. I got a couple of slides. So we got some of the key players here. The minimalists since the 1980s, a prominent group of European scholars have insisted that the Hebrew Bible, which they believe was written down only in the Hellenistic period, cannot be used to write a history of ancient Israel. The most vocal of these so-called minimalist scholars, pictured from right to left, is Niels Peter, like me, Thomas Thompson of the University of Copenhagen in Denmark, and Philip Davies and Keith Whitlam of the University of Sheffield in England, have argued that David and Solomon, like most of the figures and events presented in the Bible, were the fanciful literary creations of the biblical writers with little, if any, basis in historical or archaeological facts. Right? And now,
Now, that's the minimalist side. Now we have what's called a academic controversy. Because to them came this reaction in biblical maximalism, which basically says that at least most of or many of the details of the biblical texts have historical truths in them, things that are historically accurate. Okay? Now, the range of biblical maximalism is actually a lot greater than, say, the range of biblical minimalism. But it's as time has gone on, biblical minimalism has become more maximalist, and biblical maximalism, in some respects, has become more minimalist. Although the pendulum has moved much more for the minimalists than it has for the maximalists. Okay, right. So that sort of sets forth the overall debate. Basically, it's about the historicity of the biblical text. Do what the biblical text is what they report accurate?
Right. Can
it be used in to write history?
And yeah. I'm sorry.
And I would basically affirm yes. You can use the Bible as a guideline to help you write history.
Right. Now, one of the more prominent minimalists that gets quoted a lot within the conscious community, and you said his name just now, is Israel Finkelstein.
Yeah.
He gets quoted quite often. But it seems like he's fallen out of favor with academia.
He has, especially in Israel and in Europe.
And why would that be the case?
Well, a lot of his theories have just come to naught. Essentially, he tried to make the case early in his career that the Davidic kingdom was nothing but a small, basically city-state chiefdom. So essentially, David was nothing but a local chief of Jerusalem. That was what he was going through, and that there was no united monarchy. There was no, say, Davidic or Solomonic kingdom, and that's what his main premise was based upon. That the destructions of, say, of Joshua were inaccurate or overstated. So he's made this sort of career of, say, denying the historicity of the biblical texts. But a lot has happened since he published his books. Elliot Mazar has, discovered the Davidic fortress, the 10th century Davidic fortress in Jerusalem. The excavations at Tel Dan have kind of shown the extent of, say, the Judite kingdom and their holdings. So, he's really fallen out of favor because he can't maintain the theory he's doubled down on.
Right. He's made adjustments to his chronology, though, right?
He's had to. He's really had to make adjustments. Now, in the case of, say, Bill Deaver has been much more flexible about his views. And this is why Bill Deaver has not fallen out of the favor in the same way as, say, either Tommy Thompson or Israel Finkelstein. In the case of Bill Deaver, he says, okay, yeah, wrong about this, but okay, we can adjust the theory this way.
Right.
He's been much more intellectually flexible than Israel Finkelstein.
So he's basically sort of writing on the wall.
Well, this you do get these two kinds of different sort of personality types in academia. You get the type that will say, okay, the theories I start off with in my career, I'm going to double down on those all the way through, and I'm going to rigidly hold on to them. Now, other academics really like those types because you always know what they're going to believe. And then you get the kind that are going, yeah, the evidence doesn't look like that anymore, so I'm just going to go do this instead. And that type's very flexible. They'll change their ideas on the fly. And this is really, really aggravating to other academics. Other academics hate this sort because you can't always pin them down.
Right.
Deaver's one of those types that you can't always pin down. Frankly, I'm one of those types that you can't always pin down because I'll change with the evidence.
But that's being honest, though.
It is being honest, but it's also being very annoying.
That's true because they want you to pick a side, right? Because
they want you to pick a side and stick to it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's much easier to come at you if they know exactly what you're coming with. Right.
Yeah.
So that's true. Now let's look at a couple of archaeological findings that might have put a little pebble in the shoe of these minimalists. So let's start with the Tel Dan inscription.
Yes, the
what
Tel
can you
Dan
tell us about
inscription.
this?
Well, it has the inscription of the House of David. Now, it was found in situ, which means it was found in an archaeological dig. Now, the interesting thing about the Tel Dan inscription is that if it had just shown up on the antiquities market, it would have been labeled as a counterfeit immediately because it looks too good. Too perfect.
Now, why is it considered too perfect? What
the writing's very clean.
Here?
It's a very clean writing. Okay, and a lot of inscriptions we get of Paleo Hebrew are not clean inscriptions. So the fact we have an inscription here with such clean writing would, if it had been on the antiquities market, just sort of earmarked it as a forgery.
Right.
But because it was found in a dig, basically excavated, and we can say that, hey, this has got some street cred. And the House of David here is a very clear. It shows up in a place in the inscription that's not in a break. We're not exactly sure what the text refers to because it is very fragmentary and very broken. But it is a clear reference to the House of David. Now, scholars have tried to minimalize what this says, and they've really tried to strain the net to try to get alternate readings to this. Like they would say, like the House of the Beloved. Well, what is that?
It's still David, right?
It's still David. Yes,
right.
Because David means beloved.
So they're playing semantics. Okay.
They're playing semantics. They said, well, it actually means black kettle. I mean, really? What? How does that make sense in an inscription?
Right.
So there's been a lot of attempts to try to find an alternate reading to this because it's too perfect.
In fact, that was the first response to this, right, from the Minimalists, that this was a forgery, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's look at another one here. The Mesha Stela.
The Mesha Stela. Now, the Mesha Stela is very interesting for a number of reasons. One, it actually is... now, the Stela today is actually in the Louvre. You can actually go and see it today. It's a really interesting Stela. But it talks about the victory of King Mesha, who was a Moabite. Now, his name actually appears in the biblical text. It appears in 2 Kings, I believe chapter 3, if I'm not mistaken. So what the Mesha Stela does is it confirms the existence of a Moabite king Mesha. So until this point, until the discovery of the Mesha Stela, we had no confirming evidence that there was a king Mesha. It also has, in the inscription, talks about the house of Omri. Okay, Omri being one of the kings of the Israelite divided kingdom.
Right.
The northern kingdom of Israel. So it talks about the house of Omri and Mesha's military victory over the Israelites. So it's a very, very interesting in that it confirms two figures in the Bible, not just one.
Now, was this quickly received, or was there some pushback on this as well?
This didn't have the same pushback. And part of the reason it did not have the same pushback was because we have the complete inscription.
So there's no way to muddy the waters, right?
Well, it was actually found by Bedouin. It was found by Bedouin who couldn't read it. And the archaeologist who had found it was actually complete when it was found. But what happened was, he did a rubbing of it and the Bedouin thought that there was gold in this thing. So they heated the stone in a fire, because why else would a European be interested in such a thing if there wasn't gold in there? So they heated it up in a fire and then poured water on it until the thing burst. Wow. So what we have here is a reconstruction of the rubbing and what pieces remained of it.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy.
But because of that rubbing, we have the whole record.
Right. So it can't be.
It was a clean rubbing. It was, we have the pieces. We can compare it epigraphically, and the reconstruction is very good.
Okay.
With parts of the stone that are intact.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit about this site? I'm not even going to try to say the name.
Kefia. This one I actually don't know that much about. It is a fortress, a Davidic fortress. That's really all I know about it.
Okay.
It's not something that I've actually studied a lot on.
Okay, fair enough. What are some other findings that kind of put a hurting at the Copenhagen school of minimalism?
The Black Obelisk of I believe it's Shalmaneser, where Jehu has to go. King Jehu is recorded giving tribute to the Assyrian king. So it's Shalmaneser III, I believe, who extracts tribute out of Jehu. Okay. In the biblical text, we find a lot of names and places that are confirmed by by other inscriptions.
Right.
Like Tiglath-Pileser is in the biblical text. Shalmaneser V is in the biblical text. Right. Nebuchadnezzar II is in the biblical text. We have places like Megiddo and Dor and Sumeria that are all in the biblical text.
Talk about the Hittite kingdom.
The Hittite kingdom. Oh yes. Well, this is a big deal because this is one of the sort of the classic disproofs of the Bible that was used by higher critics in the 19th century. This was one of the big ones. Well, there's no Hittites, therefore the Bible's untrue. There's no Belshazzar, so it's also not true. And so those were like two of the big classic disproofs of the Bible in the 19th century. And what happened was, we started finding Hittites, essentially, in Turkey, ancient Anatolia, modern Turkey. And we found the capital of Hattusas and the archives and Hittite inscriptions and language, and we find that there was a vast Hittite empire. And it is so at its height under the reign of Suppiluliuma I, the Hittite Empire swallowed up the Mitanni Empire, just annexed it. Because the Mitanni were under pressure. They were either going to get conquered by the Assyrians, which nobody wants. Nobody wants to be conquered by the Assyrians. So they decided to become a vassal state of the Hittites. So you had the Hittites from the Mediterranean coast all the way into northern Mesopotamia.
It's funny how they'll say, well, the Bible doesn't have this. That all of a sudden things just pop up. It's almost like divine providence. It's like, God's just having a good time. It's like, oh, so you don't think that exists? And he just drops something. A cave opens. Something comes
like Jehoiakim being exiled to Babylon. There's a cuneiform tablet that talks about Jehoiakim being given provisions of wine and meat from the king in Babylon. So we have all of these things. Like the King Belshazzar. He's recorded on a cuneiform tablet that's in the British Museum.
So when people say you can't find any of the characters in the Bible,
well, it's complete nonsense.
It's complete nonsense.
It's complete nonsense.
But then this is what they'll hit you with, right? Well, maybe not you, but people like me. It's like, well, in ancient Kemet, we have the bodies of the pharaohs. Why we can't find any of the bodies of the people mentioned in the Old Testament?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why you can't find the bodies of people in the Old Testament. First of all, they weren't mummified.
Right.
Okay. Now we do find some of the bodies of ancient, say like Ramses II. He is mentioned in the Bible. Now, he's mentioned as a place name, but the place name is actually a reference to Ramses II. And we do have his mummified body. So we do have one mummified body of somebody mentioned in the Bible. Okay, so we have that. But we also, when we get into the Levant, we don't actually find, they didn't mummify their bodies there because they didn't have a source of natron. You need a lot of natron to mummify a body. So people were just buried or sometimes burned on funeral pyres. We have records of certain people, like, for example, kings, were often burned on a funerary pyre. They were essentially cremated.
Right.
You're not going to have a lot of burial evidence from a cremation. This is one of the reasons why, say, the tombs of, say, Judahite and Israelite kings are so intractable, because a lot of them were cremated.
Now, how
or buried in nondescript locations, like Saul. The body of Saul was buried under an oak tree.
Yeah, right. Which oak tree?
Yeah, which oak tree? Find it.
Right. But how credible are some of these more religious places? Like, I think the tomb of Abraham. Is there any credence to these places?
That's difficult because you get into what's called the onomastica problem. Now, the onomastica problem is basically where things get recorded traditions get recorded in later dates, and they become less reliable as, say, time goes on. Right. Like, for example, there were these onomastica that were produced by the Byzantines of various biblical sites that just happened to be by the roadside. Okay? So a lot of these sort of traditional sites are very, very difficult to, say, ascertain as being historical. So that is the onomastica problem. We find this in, say, certain toponyms, because toponyms can actually change location too. Like, we get certain toponyms that come into, say, Arabic writing. And in that case, you encounter the onomastica problem. Well, is that toponym the same as the original toponym that we find in the Bible? So it's sometimes difficult to take traditional renderings and establish a historical credence from them.
Right.
So I think there's definitely a balance there. You have to be able to balance between, say, what is history and what is onomasticon.
All right. So if someone asked you, who was the most attested person in the Bible based on evidence, who would that person be?
Sennacherib. Sennacherib is probably the most attested person in the whole Bible.
So what do we have for him?
We have numerous historical prisms from Assyria. He is attested in the biblical account in his attempted invasion of Jerusalem. We probably have more written about Sennacherib than any other person in the Bible. He is probably the single most attested person in the Old Testament.
Right. So we have quite a nice record of people mentioned in the Bible. Like, we actually have artifacts that we could just primary sources. Yeah. That we could clearly show people, like, here, the name is right here, is on this bulle, it's on this signet ring. We have this stele, right? So we have so the believer should feel very confident in their allegiance to the God of the Bible.
At least as far as the historicity goes. I mean, there was just something that came out this week, which is the Jeroboam ostracon that it was just announced this week, where the name Jeroboam has appeared on an ostracon that was discovered, again, in situ on a dig. And this dig, the ostracon, dates to the time of the judges. Now, the importance of Jeroboam is it's one of the alternative names for Gideon. And it's a Baal name. So we see, for the first time, a Baal name and tested in say 1100 BC inscription. Now, was this Zerubbabel the same as the prophet Gideon? We can't be sure. We don't know. But what we can say is that at the time of Gideon, the name Zerubbabel is attested.
Right.
It existed as a name.
Circumstantial evidence.
But circumstantial evidence is evidence.
This is true. This is true.
And you can actually be convicted for murder on circumstantial evidence.
All the time. A whole bunch of people in jail for that.
All the time.
That's right. So what other findings that are damning to the minimalist camp?
Well, it's just a snowball effect. We just keep finding more and more and more and more. I mean, I've talked about a lot of the evidence, say, from the Exodus. You know, there's a lot there. You know, how there's a lot of Egypt inside the Pentateuchal documents. Everything from the use of proper names to place names to cultural practices, such as carrying the bread bowls on the shoulders, to the birthing bricks, to you name it. You know, and right now, like for example, you know, one of the big sort of proofs of, say, the historicity of the New Testament, and Peter Williams wrote a very, very good book on this. Are the New Testament document, are the Gospels reliable? Mm-hmm. And he's basically doing a study of personal names and asking, well, are these personal names attested in Aramaic documents, in other Greek documents at the time? Do we find them in Palestine? You know, and he has made this really, really compelling case that the Gospel documents are historical, based upon the occurrence of personal names. Mm. Well, you can do the same thing with, say, the Pentateuch, and say, well, look at all these Egyptian names we find in the Pentateuch. You know, it's one thing to say, like the critics will say, okay, well, maybe they just memorized them as far as say tradition, you know, as part of oral tradition, and then wrote it down later in Babylon. Okay. Well, it's one thing to be able to memorize Genesis 1, even Genesis 1 to 5. I would defy anyone to try to memorize the Book of Numbers.
Even your wife is laughing. I like that.
Yeah, try to memorize the Book of Numbers. Go for it. let's see how far you get.
That would be a good one. That would be a good one.
But we find, say, in the Book of Numbers, all these Egyptian names. We find them in the Exodus. You know, we find them in Deuteronomy. You know, all this Egyptianisms. How did this persist in a Canaanite culture? Right. You know, through 7 centuries.
Right.
You know, it doesn't. You know, because these names start to be replaced over time. And over at least 7 centuries, if you're going to make that case that the Egyptian names are preserved, you also have to make the case that, well, how do the proper names get preserved, but not the other vocabulary? Because we have contemporary documents from Babylon where none of that contemporary vocabulary gets preserved. It doesn't make a whit of sense.
So it's like linguistic archaeology.
It is.
Right.
It's very much linguistic archaeology. And you can treat languages in an archaeological sense. We've done this for a long time. There's nothing astounding about that.
Someone asked, I wonder how a debate with Jabari and the real Egyptologist, Dr. Falk, would go. We don't have to wonder. We do not have to wonder.
I somehow don't think Jabari would take that debate.
Yeah. Though I would love for that to happen, though. Because he's a nice guy.
I'm game.
He's not a meanie. He's not, you know what I mean? But, you know.
I'm game to have a conversation with him. I don't debate anyone. I'm not a debater. The reason I'm not a debater is because I get too competitive. Oh, I totally go for the jugular when I am in a debate situation, and it gets ugly fast. It gets ugly fast, and so I don't debate.
Well, you came close to having a debate before, right? With who was it? What was it? Was it Pat? Not Pat Mahoney. It was the other guy from.
I had a debate with Douglas Petrovich and David Rohl at the same time.
Man,
and that was a furball. Yeah,
it's the
and it
video
did get ugly. No video. No video. There's a audio of the papers.
Really?
But there's no audio of the question and answer.
Ah, man. I would love to hear that.
Well, it wouldn't, because they denied me the mic every time I wanted it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I'd reach for the mic and the moderator would just walk on by. Like they're not going to let me speak.
That's hilarious. So now everybody's interested now. Now it's like, can we make this happen? I'm like, listen, I don't know, man. I don't know if Jabari would, that I highly doubt it. But New Testament artifacts.
Yeah.
What are some New Testament artifacts that?
Okay, we have the Pilate inscription. Basically, from Pilate's governorship. There was recently a ring with Pilate's name inscribed on it. Mm. We've got the Herodian, the architectural works of King Herod, Herod the Great, as he's often called. Mm-hmm. He did the Herodian, and he also built up his fortress at Masada. Okay, so we have that. We have now the fisherman's village at Bethsaida, which was where many of the apostles were from. Mm. Now that one's very interesting, because that actually has been much of that has been preserved because of the movement of the Sea of Galilee. Mm. Earthquake subsidence caused the sea to move 40 miles away from the village.
Wow.
So that whole village was sort of abandoned at once because there was no more fish. It's very interesting. But we find artifacts there from fishermen and a boat, and yeah, there's archaeological evidence there.
Nate says, doesn't have to be Jabari. I just want to see Dr. Falk gloves come off and brass knuckles on. So you want to unleash the Kraken, huh?
He wants the popcorn. He wants the popcorn to come out.
Oh, the popcorn. When the popcorn comes out, it's a problem. Some of you might not understand that, but
someone's going down when the popcorn comes out.
Pretty much. When you go to David's YouTube channel, when he does his reviews, right? He has this chalice of popcorn. And when he settles in with the popcorn, yeah, it gets kind of it's bad. It's bad for whoever he's reviewing.
That was a total accident too. It was like I was working that day, and I was just totally exhausted and hungry, and it's like, okay, I've got to get this review done and out, because I had a lot of my subscribers say, you gotta review this video. It's like, I don't know what to make of it. I don't understand. So it's like, okay, I can't wait till my normal Monday release cycle to do this. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to whip up a batch of popcorn, stick it in a bowl, have some iced tea, ready to go, and just do a off the cuff. I hadn't even seen the video at that point. It was just pure reaction. And so here I am munching popcorn, and my first couple comments were, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. That was just a cheap trick. And it's like, look, I was hungry. I was like, I had gone 8 hours without any food. I was famished. So it's like, okay, it was sort of a compromise,
I mean, people have made memes with you with the popcorn. It's just great.
Oh yeah.
So let me trigger you real quick here. So at BK Apologists, what are your thoughts on YouTube minimalist scholars such as Digital Hammurabi?
Hammurabi.
Hammurabi.
Digital Hammurabi. Josh Bowen. He's an atheist. He's an unbeliever. He's your typical, grew up in Christian circles, went to college and, fell out of the faith. That happens. My opinion is a lot of what he does is based upon, say, bad readings of the biblical text. And we get this all the time. I get this all the time on my channel, where, people come up with these objections, and they're really just bad readings of the biblical text. It's like, but one of the things is, biblical maximalists are not generally taking traditional readings. They're taking the text as it purports itself to be.
Right.
Guys like John Walton have made, great strains to try to show. He believes in the Bible.
Right.
But he believes in the Bible as it purports itself to be.
Absolutely.
And a lot of our traditional understandings are really, really shoddy. And they're based on bad readings. Like one of the bad readings, like I had a guy once come on my channel, and he basically said, well, where did the Israelites get the clothing from? Well, my first response was they had sheep. Figure it out. And he goes, well, where did they get the looms from? What? Wait, a loom? You're talking like 3 sticks and a bunch of stones, right? It's like, okay. Well, we have evidence of the Amoritic Semitic people at Avaris owning looms, because we find loom weights there. Okay, so I mentioned this, and he goes, yeah, but how do we know they took those looms with them? It's like, are you kidding me? Another example of this is when, like, where did they get all the leather for making shoes? I was like, well, didn't you read the text? Plague of hail came and killed all the cattle and sheep. Like, what do you think they did with all those dead animals? You think they just let them rot in the field? No, they butchered them. They tanned the leather hides, and they salted the meat. Food and leather. There was a surplus of it because of the plagues. Yeah, but we're not reading our texts.
There's a practicality that for some reason goes over people's heads, right? So,
yeah, I know. It's crazy. Because a simple reading of the text would take care of a lot of this.
Right.
I even with the whole wandering in the Sinai. Well, why isn't there any evidence of them wandering in the Sinai? Well, the Sinai conditions in the Sinai were very different than they are today. These same guys who accuse Christians of being climate change deniers in the modern age deny that there was climate change back in the late Bronze Age. Mm-hmm. Because in the late Bronze Age, the Sinai was a savanna. It was grassland. It had almond trees. It had acacia trees. It was a very, very different climate than it is today.
It's good stuff. MJ, where's MJ? He had something. I just saw it. Here we go. I like to see the popcorn come out on Russell Gamerkins Work. We've actually talked about addressing.
Yes, Gamerkins Work is a joke. And it's not a very good one. When Tommy Thompson says you go too far, that's just.
Wow. So other minimalists don't.
Other minimalists have basically said he's gone too far.
Wow.
Because he's basically, Gamerkin is basically trying to make a case for a 2nd century BC authorship of the entire Bible.
Right.
It's a crazy hypothesis. It's absolutely a crazy hypothesis, which is why he's actually on the fringe. He's a fringe view. Mm-hmm. He's not a mainstream view, not even close. He's the only one who holds the view. That's sort of the definition of fringe.
Some people,
if you're the only one holding a view, you're a fringe scholar.
Well, some people have quoted him on the conscious community. In fact, they've had him on their channel.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I think he's even appeared on some atheist channels too, like Myth Vision? I think had him on once.
Myth Vision, you know? I've heard of him too. Yeah.
You know, and they'll suck down everything he says as it's gospel, and it's like, hey, wait a minute, do you really know what this guy's saying? I mean,
so we definitely got to do a show on him.
I mean, he basically says that, you know, like your viewers might be familiar with the Ketef Hinman scrolls, a couple of silver scrolls,
yes,
that have biblical or near biblical passages that date to the 7th century BC. Okay, well, you know, Gamerkin tries to make the case that the Ketef Hinman scrolls are just part of the oral tradition. But wait a minute. If it's written down on a silver scroll, that's not oral anymore.
Right.
It's actually now written.
It's recorded now.
It's recorded now.
Wow. Someone asks, D Proverbs asks, what do we have on Joseph in Egypt or Sodom and Gomorrah?
Okay, with Joseph in Egypt, what we have is indirect evidence. So that it's his presence in Egypt is consistent with what we would expect from a sojourning Asiatic coming to Egypt and becoming vizier, essentially. It would have been consistent with the time of the Hyksos rule. It's consistent with, say, the Hyksos use of the chariot. We see the chain of gold. We do know that is something that happens in Egypt. That's like the Congressional Medal of Honor of Egypt. It's a big, big deal to get the chain of gold. We have statues from ancient Egypt that show scribes and other viziers and have that chain of gold. Like Horemheb, when he's vizier, Horemheb, when he's just a general, is awarded a chain of gold. But there's lots of scribes lots of persons in Egypt that receive this honor. It's a big, big deal. So we do have that evidence. We do also have the evidence of the mummification times of Jacob, you know, that are accurately recording. So there is actually some evidence of this. We also know from, say, the records of that are circa the time of Akhmos I, Amenhotep I, that prior to the Hyksos being driven out, the Hyksos owned all the land. Because that was part of the reward for joining Akhmos I's army, was if you join the army, you get a land grant, because all the land had been controlled by the Hyksos king. So that's consistent with, say, Joseph's scheme to purchase all the land.
Right. And you have to be somebody pretty much entrenched in the culture to know how the politics work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So for this to be a 2nd century, you know,
yeah,
it'd be kind of hard to know all those things, right? So,
you know, the divination cup of Joseph. We find a divination cup in the tomb of King Tut. Now, this is going to cause a problem for some Christians who think because Joseph was God's chosen, that he was a strict Yahwist. You know, but we have evidence that, you know, all the patriarchs, you know, were not strict Yahwists.
I mean, he married into a totally different priesthood, right? The priest of On. So
yeah, his wife was the daughter of the priest of Heliopolis.
Right. So,
and On is the biblical name of On. On comes from the Egyptian Ianu, and that's the Egyptian name for Heliopolis. So even there, you get a little piece of geography.
Even that gives
Even that gives us a clue that Joseph was actually there.
Because how would you know that unless you're contemporary with that type of information?
Yeah.
I have a super chat here and a question. What are your thoughts on Papyrus Brooklyn 35.1446, and can it be used as indirect evidence?
This is the slave papyrus. This is the slave papyrus, and it does record Semitic names. But we also know that those Semitic names go way back.
Right. So it's not necessarily
they're not
those
unique.
Specific individuals.
Yeah, they're not those specific individuals.
Right.
It's other people that have the same name.
Right. But it's proof that you have Semitic people who are serving the people.
The Brooklyn Papyrus dates to the Middle Kingdom. It to one of the Sobek Hoteps, I believe, is when it dates to. And it was found at Lahun during the 13th dynasty.
Cool. So, you know what? I think we're gonna wrap things up. But before we do, we always like to know what our guests will be doing in the immediate future. So, Dr. Falk, what can we be expecting from you shortly?
Oh, well, there's been just a rash of archaeological finds that have come out in the last couple weeks. So I'm doing a sort of a little bit of catch up here to try to get those videos out. So we've got some exciting discoveries about Terah, father of Abraham. We've got, of course, the Jerubbabel inscription, which I'll be doing more on. So we are just sort of, at this point, following the course and producing more and more content that people can learn from and enjoy.
Definitely. And, of course, we'll be having the good doctor on the platform from time to time to cause all sorts of violence and mayhem. So,
I'm a troublemaker.
Yes. We like that over here. We definitely like it.
It's number 6 for you.
Absolutely. I'm a glutton for punishment, what can I tell you? So with that being said, Dr. David Faulk, BK Apologist, signing off. Catch you later. Peace.